Hi guys, welcome back. So, if you look at this screen right now, tell me what you see. Uh, I see a bunch of clutter. All right, I think there's just too much in your face. As a modeling application, right? As game developers, we're gonna have to model our stuff, and as such, I believe we need as much real estate on our screen as possible. Now, one way to achieve this is to have multiple screens, as in multiple monitors, which will allow you to actually split up all these menus along, the left and the right side of your main monitor, and will allow you to actually, have a better visibility of what you're doing. But even if that's not the case, all right, I still think that there's way more improvements to be done here when it comes to Maya. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to strip all of this confusing stuff, intimidating, confusing stuff. At least that's how I see it. There's too many options. There are these polygons, sculpting, rigging, animation, right? Curved surfaces, generals, all these tooltips here. Then you got the hot box, right, with the space bar and the left mouse button, which gives you like different options depending what you press, right? All these different weird things. Double click this. There's tool settings coming up, popping up. You got the attribute editor, like layers and modeling toolkits, and freaking. Then you've got the animation timeline here. You got your mouse scripting here, right? You got the freaking layouts here, which like it's ridiculous, right? The amount of stuff that you have is absolutely insane. That's on the screen, and I think it's about time we actually get rid of all of that, okay? Because I don't think you need these. You don't really need these. Okay, there's a lot more productive workflow here that I think we can achieve. So, in order to do that, I believe it is time. The lasso tool. There's no hotkey for the lasso tool. How cool is that? All right. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get rid of all of that. In order to do that, we're gonna go into Windows. Okay, and we're gonna go into UI elements, and actually I'm gonna tear this thing off. Now, how do we maximize our viewport? Well, first and foremost, we probably don't need the command line, because unless you're into scripting and you're really going to go deep into Maya, to be fair, with this thing, you can actually script, you can model in this thing, right? You can model with script. You don't even have to use your mouse if you know what you're doing. However, I believe it's quite cumbersome. Some people find it easy. Some people find that, artists in particular find the mouse scripting quite valuable. I find it completely useless, at least for game development purposes. Usually this is done for some, whenever a tool does not provide you with the desired outcome, right? You'll be writing a script to do that for you. All right, so let's get rid of the command line. So, well, there's a little bit of space that we got saved. Now, the next thing we're going to get rid of is the helpline, because the helpline doesn't really give you anything worthwhile. I don't think it gives enough information to be worth the space that it takes. And to be honest, most of the time when you hover over something, it should give you like a tooltip. Right, there you go. Cylindrical mapping, create a cylindrical whatever. Right, and it's actually the same thing that's on the pop-up here is written at the bottom. If you notice at the bottom left corner, it says the exact same thing as the tooltip. So we don't really need this either. So let's get rid of the helpline. Next thing is the range slider, which is this thing here, which is only useful when you have animation. And in our case, we don't have animation, so we don't, at least for now, right? So we don't need that either. So there's more space saved. We don't really need the time slider either, because we're not, we're not doing any animation, or even if we had done it, we'd probably be working in a different workspace. So we're going to get rid of that. And we don't really need the shelf either. And let's get rid of the toolbox. And let's get rid of this stuff, all these editors and all these things, right? Boom. And as you can see, we've got loads of space to work with. Now, maybe we could get rid of the status line. Maybe. I prefer to keep it on just in case. I don't even know why. I don't even know why I'd keep it. Should I keep it? I don't know. Let's get rid of it. Or maybe put it back. Or get rid of it. I don't know. Choices. I get rid of it. Just get rid of all of that. So we have nice clean interface. As you can see, this is not nearly as daunting as it was before. We just buried everything. Now you might ask the question, well, now that I've buried everything, how the hell am I going to access all that stuff? Very simple. Quite simple, actually. We're going to use the hotkeys, so what we got rid of right now is stuff that can be accessed through the Windows UI elements, and you can just enable them, right? Or the stuff that was here on the right side, the attribute box, the channel box, right? All these things, they're available through the general editors. So as you can see, I can maybe get the attribute editor, I can get the channel box, right? I can get the tool settings. Like, these are stuff that usually you'd be using most of the time, okay? So it's nice to have them. Unfortunately, I do think having them around at all times just freaking takes up too much space. Like, look at this. A fifth of my screen is gone, right? A fifth of your screen, you're sacrificing that just to have it sticking around all the time. Now, obviously, it would be very annoying if you had to go into your general editors and every time have the damn thing popping up. You go to Windows, right? Go to general editors and get it. No, forget about it. You might argue that, well, dude, you could hold the spacebar. Remember the hotbox? You could do the same thing from here. Windows, and you can go to general editors and then attribute. Still quite annoying. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a hotkey for this stuff. Hotkeys. If you notice, what's the most useful area of the keyboard? It's this one right here. Okay, these 5 buttons are the most useful ones. The 3 rows of 5 buttons are the most useful ones because this is the hot zone for your fingers, right? Your fingertips are usually here when you're playing games, when you're doing everything. Your mouse is on the right side, right? This is where your right hand is. Or if you're a lefty, maybe it's on the left side, and maybe in this case, yeah, you may actually be using this more than this. But in majority of the cases, people would be using this bit here. Now let's see what the fine crew at Autodesk actually assigned the Q key, right? Remember, it's the key that leaves a tool. Let's say we were scaling something. So let's create a polygon like a sphere. Focus on it, and let's say we wanted to scale something. So boom, we scaled it, and now every time we select something, it's going to be with scaling. How we get rid of it? We press Q, and boom, there's no scaling now. We're back to neutral, just a selection. Now that's fine and dandy, but let's see what else is there. Let's hover over Q. See, we've got the Shift Q, which is the Select Component Tool Marking menu, which essentially means whenever you're in component mode, you're going to get rid of that. But this is basically the vertex, the edge, and the face selection mode, which is available through, at least in my case, I assigned it to F1, F2, F3, and F4. And Maya's default is F9, F10, F11, and I believe F8 or not, but whatever. I'm not using these, so I don't know. What else is there on Q? We've got the quit. So Control Q apparently quits the application. And like I said, this is one of the hottest spots on the keyboard. You want to have this to the most useful stuff you can possibly have. And apparently Q, the guys at Autodesk decided that, people quit very often, so we should probably just go ahead and assign Control Q to quit just for the sake of having a hotkey assigned to it. Now, I think this is completely ridiculous and kind of pointless. So what I did on my personal set keys, I actually reversed that. Let me just see what's here on the L1. Lock curve length. All right, save. Because I actually, on my personal key set, I accidentally killed that one. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to open the hotkey editor again. I actually go to lock curve. Like, you don't have to do this. I'm just doing it for my sake because I screwed it up. Right, save. Anyway, let's see what I've done. So I used Q and I set up everything that I would ever need on Q. So Shift Q would get my open up my channel box. Control Q would get me my tool settings, and Alt Q would get me my attribute editor. Now these 3 simple modifications, and by the way, I set it up so at Control O, which by default opens a scene, which you could easily get, and you do it like once during your day, right, or twice maybe. So I set up to Control O to be opening the outliner, which is basically your scene hierarchy, right? And if you press Control O, a bunch of null groups here which need to be deleted. Right, just get rid of that. For some reason I got a bunch of materials here as well, but whatever. So as you can see, there's my P sphere, right? This is the P sphere that I just created, and you know, if once you start creating loads of objects, this is going to get packed, right? And you need the outliner to you know, to organize it, to maybe hide a bunch of stuff, or just see its different attributes and settings. So just the outliner is a nifty thing to have, but it's on demand, all right? It's on demand, and it's never a good idea to have it stuck to something unless you have a second monitor. If you have a second monitor, just stick it to the second monitor, right? I don't have one. Well, I do, but it's not the right size, and it just looks weird. So I decide to I think it's best to have the outliner be on demand. So Control O for outliner. Shift Q is going to give you a channel box. So in our case, we actually have the channel box here. I've selected the sphere, and now I have all the translate, the rotate, and the scales of it, as well as I got all the inputs that I possibly need, right? I got the radius for the initial. I got the radius. Come on. There we go. Got the radius I can set up here, right? Maybe make a sky sphere, a skybox, right? Or maybe increase the subdivisions of it, maybe increase the height of it as well in terms of sub-Ds. And the subdivision, like I already said, is just you split in the quad and, you know, in two, and you subdivide it essentially. That's what you're doing. Let me just get rid of these layers here. Delete layer and delete layer. Okay, now we got our layers clear. Don't need the animation layers yet. So like I said, you could probably get away with it being on the side because it doesn't really take that much space, and you'd be using it most of the time. But nah, forget it. In my case, I think it's just better get rid of it. Then you got the Control Q, which is your tool settings. So if I'd be moving something, I got my tool settings for the Move tool. For Rotate tool, it's a different setting. For Scale tool, it's a different setting, right? Got all these things, but you don't need it at all times to be actually in your vicinity here, right? So we don't need that either. Then you got the Alt Q, which is your attribute editor, which is fancy for basically everything your object is made of. So in our case, let's go to the channel box and see what we have here, Polysphere 1. And if we go here to Polysphere 1, we have the exact same settings, right? We can actually go and modify them here, and you can see them reflected in the channel box. So the attribute editor is a fancier channel box, right? Basically, like for example, instead of having the translates here for P-Sphere 1, you can actually go to P-Sphere 1 in the attribute editor and do the exact same modifications here. I find it having to use it a lot less often because the cool thing about it is you can actually change different behaviors, right? You can, no, I don't want to save. You can have like different outline colors, right? You can set up the drawing overrides, let's say for texturing, shading. Very customizable, highly useless in my opinion because it's very rare. You really need to know what you're looking for, right? You're not going to be using this all the time. Maybe for material settings, right? Change the color of the damn thing, like the alpha or the transparency of it. But in general, you really wouldn't bother with it. It's just nice to have it around, so Alt Q would get that for you. Anyway, as you can see, we've created quite a lot of space, and we still have the basic options here, right? The tool thing, let me just pop it back in. The toolbox doesn't really give you that much to work with. Like if you look around, if I can get it to, actually, if I can drag the damn thing, come on, move. If I can drag the thing, as you can see, like, I mean, what is this, right? This is Q, W, E, R. You got the brush, which you can paint selection tool, use it with tab. You can use you can paint with tab. There we go. I'm selecting with tab. There you go. I'm doing the exact same thing. I can select it here and just use a brush, but you know, just overkill. The lasso tool is nice, but like I said, if you really need it, you can get the shortcut for it. All right, like you don't need this the lasso tool in general because it's it's very weird to work with. At least that's how I find it, because the selections are so inconsistent. Usually, if you need a particular selection, you work from maybe from a different perspective, right? And speaking of perspectives, let me just give this layout here like that, because by accident I just swapped them around, and get rid of that. Q obviously puts you back into the default mode. I don't believe there is a lasso. There's a lasso hotkey. Let me see. Lasso. Yeah, the lasso hotkey is empty, so maybe you could go with, I don't know, Control R. Control R is empty. There's nothing on Control R, so you could use Control R maybe. Yeah, or Control W, or L, or Control L. Like, look at all your options, right? There are a ridiculous amount of options. So you could use the lasso as Control R if you really want to. Let's just set up Control R so that I shut up about it. So now we have access to the lasso tool as well, if we ever needed it, okay? So now that you have it all set up, let me just delete this. You have plenty of space to work with. And we're going to discuss on how to actually utilize this software now that we're missing all these essential, buttons. Well, not essential, but you're missing a bunch of stuff like the shelves and whatnot. So that the clutter is gone. All right, so I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to see you guys in the next video where we're going to talk about the hotbox.